Good morning, afternoon, evening or night, whenever you're watching this, welcome. One of my oldest and dearest friends owns this land. When she moved to this area in the early 80s, she bought a farmhouse which was pulled down before it could fall down, the barn which is now her home, some woodland and the ruins of a mill which came with the associated infrastructure, including feeder streams, weirs, goits and a mill pond, all of which is now a private nature reserve. I have her permission to wander here, forage here, metal detect and even dig here. A few years ago I dug out this stream which had silted up, still a lot of silt in it, and could do with some more digging before long. I found a few vintage bottles in the silt, and over at the other end of the mill pond my friend has found vintage bottles too. I'm going to see if I can find any there today. The mill that this pond was built for was first insured in 1791, which probably means that construction of it began a year or more earlier, and water from here travelled down valley a few hundred metres, at the end of which it turned a water wheel which powered large machines. There's no reliable record of what those first machines did, though it seems likely that they were for thread manufacture. The earliest testimonial I found is from somebody who started work there in 1828 at the age of 7 on a machine that made thread. A fair amount of frog spawn, considering. This used to be an incredible sight for frogs, with tens of thousands of tadpoles in a good year. But things change, and herons set up nest in those trees up there. I think I can see 5 nests now. Beautiful, elegant-looking birds, but big and hungry, and the frog and toad populations have suffered. I think the newts are still doing okay, though. I remember one hot summer's day about 5 years ago, sitting out on this fallen tree, reading a book with my toes dipped in the water, and I was an object of intense curiosity to quite a few beautiful dragonflies that came and inspected me from all angles with their strange faceted eyes. That was a lovely experience. Two wagtails out on the branches. They're fairly endangered as a whole species, but the population around here is quite healthy. That's the overflow pipe, which, now that the other pipes are largely blocked, drains almost as much water as flows in, and to some extent cleans out the leaves, at least the ones that float. This corner here, though, beyond the clutches of the outflowing current, is leaves mulching all the way down. For newts like this corner, it's good for hiding in, and close to the sunniest bit too, which, when it's sunny, does tend to draw people, most of whom don't seem to realise that it's a private nature reserve. It's dangerous to swim here if you don't know where the dangers are, and at least one person died in the past, diving in and breaking their neck. Doesn't stop people, and I think people have swum here recently, because up until a fortnight ago there was a no swimming sign on this tree, and it looks to have been torn down. But I'm at least glad that I can't see any recent plastic mess left behind. Ooh, the wagtails are hunting. Very graceful flying, snatching insects from the surface. Going to have to get a telephoto lens sometime. Could have filmed the heron from a distance too, and there's often coots and ducks on this pond. This field, down below the pond, was, at one time, a tennis court, because although this was once a very early part of the Industrial Revolution, by Victorian times the industry was leaving, and these woodlands became a popular leisure site, drawing people from the still growing large industrial cities on either side of the Pennine Hill Range. And so there were campsites, including one run from the farmhouse that my friend eventually bought. Soon after she moved here, she found quite a few bottles dating from the early 20th century around the perimeter of where the tennis court was. Seems like those holidaying folks were kinda litterbugs, although can't really say for sure that we'd be any different back then, when mass consumerism was rapidly gathering pace and nature conservation was barely embryonic. My plan for finding bottles, such as it is to wander along the base of a pond wall, stabbing the ground, hoping to feel the texture of glass and hear the sound. Then there's a gully along the base of the hillside, which might have been an attractive bin at one time, and failing that, I'll wander along the riverside and see if there's anything being washed out. I doubt this is going to be the most photogenic thing to watch, but the first couple of stabs at least, perhaps. It's not my hand that's wobbling so much, it's the steel rod being quite bendy when pressure's put on it, but it goes into the ground relatively easily, and there's about 70 centimetres of depth that it can be pushed to. I made this simply out of a garden dibber, a steel rod, some epoxy resin and milliput. I made it for this site, but there are quite a few I know of that are on old maps as being dump sites, but there's nothing left on the surface, so a good probe stick might help in finding where the bottles are buried. A rock. There was nothing much on the first side. It was interesting to find out, though, that there are another 2 steps of a wall beneath the ground level. Now I'm working my way up the gully at the hillside side of the field. There's a lot more stones here, and I'm not stabbing as deeply because the bedrock does seem to be only about 8 inches down. I didn't actually expect to find much this way today. This place is, after all, completely different from a bottle dump, and while there might be little concentrations of bottles, they're probably few and very spaced out. It looks like there's some pottery sherds in that hollow. Tea mug, and not all that old really. In fact, I think I recognise it. At least I think that the owner of the land might have some very similar to it in her kitchen. Not sure about this one, but she does occasionally watch my videos, and so I stand a chance of finding out if these were once hers, perhaps brought out on a wander and put somewhere safe when the drinks were drunk, to be picked up on the way home, then forgotten. The ground probe stick had no success on this site, so mudlarking I think. There's a riverbank, and I know there's some pottery along its edge. I spotted some from upon the path, down by the outflow. Nice vintage glass, fairly worn, so it's come a fair way. I would guess that it's come either from the mill a mile upriver that once the industry had left and the machines removed became a leisure emporium, which included a roller rink on the first floor and several cafes, or it might have come from one of the farms on the hills, washed down a little stream into the river. Plain, or I'm not going to say it, that phrase belongs to the Johnsons. Plain anyway. Theoretically, at one point, that thing at the bottom could have been opened to drain the dam. I wonder if it ever was drained before the mechanism became a solid mass of rust. Thick piece of stoneware. Curious really, it's a chip off the base edge of something, steep-sided, but not quite vertical. Maybe a flagon, that seems likely. I see a few bits down on this beach. Plastic. And some more worn river glass. Nice colour. A bit of Cornish ware-like mug. Some redware, which does seem to be made from much the same stuff as bricks, with the vague remains of a brown glaze on both sides. Not anything really exciting, but the quantity is surprising and suggests the possibility that there is a dump site upriver being washed out. There's also fossils in this river, primarily Carboniferous era fossils. This is an imprint fossil of some semi-rotted vegetation, quite common and not really clear enough to be any further identifiable. Looks vaguely fossil-like, but more likely just how the rock was formed. I quite like it anyway. And I spy some ridged pottery, which is something I rarely pick up because it's so common, but it shouldn't be common this far into the woods. Some gorgeous blue glass there, with letters on it. James Simpson of Hebden Bridge, at the start of the 20th century one of the area's most prolific bottlers of mostly mineral water, but a few of the soft drinks too. Foil top off something quite uninteresting, and a brick of sorts, no writing. I did once find what seemed likely to be an Elizabethan brick in this river, and that's one of only 2 bricks I've ever taken home from a mudlark. I gave it to Phil Johnson. bit of an old tennis ball there, chewed up by a dog. Oh, I see possibly a hole in an intact bottle. That's exciting. Some more fragments of glass. And a vulcanite bottle stopper. Actually, 2 vulcanite bottle stoppers, and one of them at least looks to be a war grade one, which neatly dates it to around about 1944. I'm not feeling particularly agile today, so rather than scramble over this fallen tree with accompanying thorn vines, I'm going to mooch around. Plastic. More plastic. An old sweet wrapper. The reason I'm not up to my usual can-do attitude to scrambling up and over things today is I did my first forge melt yesterday. It wasn't particularly hard manual labour setting it up and putting it all away again, but I did have a big adrenaline response to some parts of the experience, and that can be quite exhausting, so today I'm feeling my age and a bit. Some common bistort, nice lemony flavour to the stalks, and a little wire which, yes, has a tiny bit of copper in it, which is a bonus. Now then, glass. That is the shoulder of a cod bottle, and aside from it being a small fragment of a very broken bottle, is in excellent condition. No glass disease and no scratches. Is a tantalising possibility of what there could possibly be hiding beneath this field. This one looks like a milk bottle. Yes, pasteurised against tuberculosis. Good, don't fancy getting that. Not exactly my usual taste in glass things, but the label looks to be etched and it's in good condition, so why not? This one, marginally interesting shape, because I was only expecting drinks bottles here, and this looks like a shampoo bottle. Now the stoppers. First one is war grade. It's interesting again because I thought the tennis court would likely have been out of use by, and especially during the Second World War. The second is, let's see, also a war grade, but with a different depth scoop of it, which I thought meant it was slightly earlier, when supplies of rubber were just beginning to run low. Might be a mistaken assumption. Looks like there's a bit of a plate down there. This is starting to look more like a tiny dump site than the casual waste of thirsty tennis players. Gorgeous colour. Not enough of the writing left to make out. Right, I think I'm going to extricate myself now from this tangle of branches, grab the plastic bottle that's half buried. Don't know what that is, not sure I want to know. Not going to open it, but we'll take it and bin it. Now all of this is approximately 70 centimetres below the level of most of the field, so that's roughly a centimetre of overburden built up per year, unless it was deliberately buried. If it was, I don't think it's a dump site that's really worth digging. There's not much here poking out, and I'll stab the ground around it to be sure, but I doubt there's still much hidden. A little once over with the pinpointer revealed this metal sticking out. A little bit of brass riveted to the end, and then a crust of rust. That's a drinks can. And there was a little signal somewhere around here. Might have a little dig for it. Still in there. This is the upended root system of a fallen tree. There isn't much deeper left to go before I break through to thin air. Broke on through to the other side, and still no sign of a target. That's a root. Let's check it's still in here. I think it might be a phantom signal. I'll bring you back if I actually do find it. I came around to the other side of the root system to see if I could spot it, and instead found a flower. I like it, and I shall take it. Now I've walked the full riverside edge of the field, had a good stab around with the ground probe, and found nothing more of interest, but some nice wild garlic. Not quite fully grown yet, but hopefully by the time I'm allowed to go mudlarking proper again, I really want to see the field of wild garlic that I once found when I walked the full edge of the big bottle dump site. That, in flower, was a highlight of that walk for me. I've also found 2 pieces of wood, well, 3 actually, over near the broken teacups in the hollow of the tree roots. These are the 2 that are in reasonable condition, and 3 timber is worth having, if I can be bothered to carry it home, either for crafting, woodworking, or firewood. That, I think, is it for this site, until perhaps summer when the woods are all flowers and the dragonflies fly. Now homewards I'm bound. And roundup time. That's not the best bottle hunting and mudlarking site, but I love that place nonetheless, and some of my happiest memories are there. So, considering that I've spent a lot of time there over the years, it goes to show that there is way more that you can find beneath the superficial appearance of a place, if only you look for it. I went in with expectations of maybe finding confirmation of my friend's hypothesis that the tennis players left their drinks bottles alongside the court, and that might still be so, but instead I ended up finding a tiny wartime dump site. 2 war-grade bottle stoppers, and one is one that I haven't found before, in the depression that was designed to save on rubber so that the armed forces had enough. There is a little S and a smaller BTE, which I haven't been able to find any information on. Anyone know anything about it? I didn't bring much else of interest back. Some wood, a bit of copper wire, some nicely worn glass, a nice little fragment of pottery with a flower, and the milk bottle, which was an absolute pain to try to clean. The algae inside is firmly welded to the inside, despite soaking and scrubbing, and the writing on it that I thought was etched was not, and came off in warm water. Oh well, the day wasn't particularly about finding things that I wanted to take. It was about going for a walk in the nice springtime weather, showing a small part of the historic industrial landscape of this area, and doing something that I haven't tried before, and then trying to make a video out of it. I did enjoy the day, and I hope that you've enjoyed the resulting video. Time now for the thank yous. As ever, a big thank you to everyone who's watched, liked, commented and shared my videos. A huge thank you to everyone who's donated through Ko-fi. I am aiming to have some mini clips to put up there soon. I've been inspired by what Caroline and Phil have done with their page. These very short videos will be viewable by anyone, and as ever, there's no request for anyone to donate anything, just my gratitude when anyone does. A few things have been bought off my 2 Amazon wish lists. Offer one dedicated to ingredients for YouTube video projects. Louise Guerin, who's been a great supporter of several mudlarking channels during these strange times, bought 2 packs of Super Sculpey, which is my favourite medium for making models, and a pack of thin acrylic sheets, an essential ingredient in making some of the moulds for some of the resin projects I'm planning. Thank you so much, Louise. Your kindness is wonderful. Another thing has been bought, which I think arrived this morning, but we have a 3-day quarantine on post in this house. A bit of a pain, certainly, but I did manage to catch a minor throat infection off a parcel last summer, when it was only a 2-day quarantine. So while the pandemic persists, precaution remains necessary, and that item will be in the next video roundup. Mrs. Metcalf kindly bought these Fry's chocolate cream bars off my other Amazon wishlist. Thank you so much. Your late husband had great taste. Both I and my girlfriend really like these. Her favourite is the raspberry, and mine is the orange. And there is a new flavour to try. Strawberry. I do hope that you've enjoyed this video. If you have and you'd like to, then any way you choose to show appreciation is very much appreciated. The options are likes, dislikes, comments, shares, donations through Ko-fi, or purchases from one or more of the 2 available Amazon wish lists, one of which helps set up faster for some of the videos that I would like to make, and the other one has helped to buoy up my usually quite stable mental health in troublesome lockdown times. I hope that you're all keeping safe and well, looking after yourselves and your loved ones as best you can. Thank you all very much for watching, and for now, goodbye.